Run your hand along the ancient wooden railing of the Kiyomizu-dera temple stage today. It is weathered smooth by the endless press of human palms, smelling faintly of incense and the damp cedar that holds the enormous structure aloft. The air here in the eastern hills, the Higashiyama district, is cool even under the fierce Japanese sun, and the modern city of Kyoto sprawls below you, a tapestry of gray roofs, humming traffic, and carefully ordered blocks. The roar you hear today is the distant whine of a tourist bus climbing the steep slope, and the murmurs are 1,000 languages spoken by visitors seeking photographs of this breathtaking view, framed by the fiery maple leaves of autumn or the ethereal pink froth of cherry blossoms in the spring. But close your eyes and let the modern soundscape fade, peeling away the present like layers of dust from an ancient scroll. It is not autumn, and it is certainly not peaceful. It is the spring of 1467, and the city below, the magnificent Heian-kyō, the capital of peace and tranquility, is about to be ripped apart. The delicate, elegant grid, planned 1,000 years earlier to reflect cosmic order, is dissolving into anarchy. The sounds you now hear are terrifyingly different. The dull clank of metal on metal as samurai factions fortify noble estates, the choked shouts of terrified merchants trying to flee the impending battle, and soon the terrifying crackle of fire, not a controlled blaze, but the untamed hunger of a city consuming itself. This city, Kyoto, the enduring heart of Japan, is a master of contradiction. It is the stage where the most refined aesthetics were perfected, where poetry, perfume, and calligraphy defined power, not steel. Yet it has been the epicenter of violence, fire, and political betrayal, enduring a siege that lasted 11 grueling years, the Ōnin War, Ōnin War. To walk through Kyoto today is not simply to tour a collection of preserved temples and gardens. It is to perform an act of temporal archaeology, scraping back the layers of refinement and recovery to feel the heartbeat of a civilization that clung fiercely to its cultural soul, even as its political body was ripped to shreds. To understand why this place, nestled deep within a protective basin ringed by mountains, became the inevitable magnetic center of Japan for over 1,000 years, we must first understand the political impulse that created it. Japan was restless in the late 8th century. The preceding capital, Nara, had achieved great cultural heights, but it suffered from a fatal flaw. The powerful Buddhist monastic orders had grown too strong, too wealthy, and too politically active, challenging the authority of the imperial throne itself. This was not merely spiritual influence. These monks commanded private armies, possessed massive tax-exempt landholdings, and threatened to swallow the government whole. Emperor Kanmu understood that to reassert centralized imperial power, he needed a dramatic, symbolic, and geographical break. After a temporary ill-fated move to Nagaoka-kyo, which was quickly abandoned due to perceived curses and political setbacks, Kanmu's gaze settled on the serene basin where the Katsura and Kamo rivers met. In 794, Heian-kyō was officially founded. The name itself was a statement of intent, the capital of peace and tranquility, a fresh start, insulated from the corrupting political and religious influences of the past. The city plan was an architectural declaration of global power and cosmic order. It was meticulously modeled on Chang'an, the immense, perfect grid capital of Tang Dynasty China. It was a perfect rectangle, 6 kilometers north to south and 4.5 kilometers east to west, divided by massive, straight avenues that formed an orderly checkerboard. The centerpiece was the vast Suzaku Avenue, a thoroughfare 85 meters wide running north-south leading directly to the imperial palace complex, the Dairi. This palace, located at the northern center of the city, symbolically anchored the emperor, the son of heaven, at the very nexus of the orderly universe. The modern traveler arriving at Kyoto Station today experiences this initial order in a bizarre, futuristic way. You step out of the Shinkansen, the bullet train, into the towering glass and steel cathedral of the Kyoto Station complex, a deliberate, colossal statement of 21st century architectural audacity. It feels like a space station dropped into the middle of history. But as you navigate the city by taxi or local bus, you immediately notice the underlying logic, the enduring framework of Kanmu's original vision. The main streets Kawaramachi, run mathematically straight, following the ancient north-south and east-west axes. Though the massive, original Suzaku Avenue is now fragmented beneath modern streets like Senbon-dori, the ghost of the grid remains palpable, a structural memory embedded beneath the asphalt. This deliberate symmetry of the capital was the stage for the Heian period, 794 to 1185, often called the Golden Age of Japanese history. Political and cultural power converged here. The emperor, while nominally supreme, gradually saw his practical administrative authority hollowed out, not by a hostile army, but by courtly intrigue and the quiet, pervasive dominance of the Fujiwara clan. The Fujiwara mastered a system of soft power known as Second Seiji, Sekkon Seiji, or regency government. They ensured that emperors married Fujiwara daughters and that the children of those unions, raised by Fujiwara matriarchs, were guided by Fujiwara regents. This control was absolute, achieved without a single coup or battle, securing their family's dominion for centuries. Under the Fujiwara, the imperial court reached its zenith of aesthetic refinement, known as Miyabi, courtly elegance, a deep, sometimes melancholic appreciation of transient beauty, aware. This was a world where a misplaced syllable in a poem or an incorrectly layered silk garment could ruin a career or a romance. Political appointments were decided less by administrative skill and more by calligraphy, music, and the ability to compose exquisite waka poetry. To immerse yourself in this atmosphere today, you must visit the Kyoto Imperial Palace Go-sho, a serene compound located in the sprawling Imperial Park Gion at the ancient heart of the city. While the current buildings are reconstructions following frequent fires, the scale, the quiet dignity of the grounds, and the architecture itself, the Shindenzukuri style speak volumes. This style prioritized open space, natural wood, unpainted to emphasize honesty and simplicity, and a seamless connection to the meticulously crafted surrounding gardens. Imagine a nobleman crossing the polished, light-filled corridor of his vast mansion. The only sounds are the rustle of his multi-layered silk robes and the gentle murmur of water in the artificial stream designed to attract the nightingale. There is a faint scent of rare powdered incense clinging to the air, and the sunlight is carefully filtered by blinds. His concerns are not tax collection or military campaigns, which are now handled by obscure provincial officers, but the agonizing choice of which shade of plum blossom pink to use in his morning letter to a secret lover. This obsessive focus on aesthetic perfection, detached from the harsh political reality outside the capital, fostered the birth of truly indigenous Japanese culture, Kokufu Bunka, national-style culture. The definitive moment of this cultural independence arrived in 894, when the imperial court formally abolished the Kentoshi, the missions to Tang Dynasty China. Japan was declaring that it had absorbed what it needed from the continent and was now confident enough to forge its own artistic identity. The development of kana script, the flowing, syllabic writing system that allowed for the nuanced expression of the Japanese language, alongside the blocky Chinese characters kanji, was the engine of this new culture. It was in the hands of court women, denied the formal education in Chinese classics afforded to men, that this script found its power. Murasaki Shikibu, a lady-in-waiting at the Heian court, used kana to write the tale of Genji Monogatari, the world's first psychological novel, a sweeping saga of aristocratic life, illicit romance, and the profound sadness that underlies ephemeral beauty. When you walk the quiet streets of Jinjian today, the preserved wooden machiya houses glowing softly at dusk, or when you witness the precise, ritualized beauty of a traditional tea ceremony chanoyu, you are experiencing the direct legacy of the Heian court. The discipline, the refinement, the quiet focus on the perfect ephemeral moment, it all traces back to the sensibilities refined by Fujiwara regents and literary ladies 1,000 years ago. But this very refinement contained the seeds of its own destruction. While the aristocrats obsessed over poetry contests, land ownership outside Kyoto became increasingly decentralized. The Shoen, tax-exempt private estates, proliferated, carving up the nation's wealth and starving the central government's coffers. The imperial court lost the power of the purse and thus the power to govern. Who then collected the revenue, policed the borders, and settled disputes? The warrior class, the bushi or samurai, rose from the provinces, masters of horseback archery and the deadly sweep of the curved sword. The rise of the samurai culminated in the bloody Genpei War in the late 12th century, tearing the old order apart. The victory of Minamoto no Yoritomo in 1185 did not destroy Kyoto, but it fundamentally changed its political status forever. Yoritomo established the shogunate, the military government in Kamakura, hundreds of kilometers to the east. Kyoto remained the undisputed cultural and imperial capital, the sacred home of the emperor and the ancient aristocracy Kuge, but political and military power resided elsewhere. This established the enduring dual governance structure of Japan, the symbolic Sacred Heart in Kyoto and the pragmatic military fist far away. For centuries, Kyoto experienced periods of fragile peace punctuated by violent internal conflict as rival warrior regimes fought to control not the city itself, but the legitimacy that only the presence of the emperor could confer. It became a crucial prize, but its defenses were symbolic, not military. The grand grid plan of Heian-kyō, designed for administration and ceremony, was utterly unsuited for medieval siege warfare. And then came the Great Conflagration, the event that physically scarred Kyoto beyond recognition and ushered in the century of war, the Ōnin War starting in 1467. This was not a quick battle. It was a devastating, decade-long civil war fought not around the capital but within its streets, houses, and temple compounds. The catalyst was a succession dispute within the ruling Ashikaga shogunate, whose headquarters had been established in the Muromachi district of Kyoto in the 14th century. The conflict quickly escalated beyond a family quarrel, drawing in the most powerful regional warlords daimyo, who used the succession crisis as a pretext to settle old scores and carve up territory. Two immense armies, the eastern under Hosokawa, and the western under Yamana, moved into the capital, taking up residence on opposite sides of the central Suzaku Avenue, facing each other across a kilometer-wide strip of nominal peace that quickly became a no-man's land. Micronarrative: imagine standing on the elevated gate of Toji Temple in the southern quadrant. It is late spring 1467. The air is thick, not with pollen, but with the dust kicked up by tens of thousands of marching soldiers, men drawn from provinces hundreds of miles away, indifferent to Kyoto's artistic or cultural legacy. The eastern forces, perhaps numbering 80,000 men, have seized the imperial palace and the shogun's official residence, effectively holding both the emperor and the shogun hostage, claiming legitimacy. Across the ruined Suzaku Avenue, the Western forces are establishing their strongholds, commandeering temples and noble mansions, turning elegant wooden estates into crude fortifications. The city, already fragile, begins to shatter. The nobles, the keepers of high-end refinement, suddenly find their elegant privacy invaded by rude, armed provincial samurai. Their aesthetic world, built on quiet retreat and ritual, is replaced by the vulgar necessities of military occupation. Soldiers requisition rice stores, tear down fences for firewood, and use priceless gardens as latrines. Initially, the fighting is restrained, a bizarre dance of intimidation, but soon, desperation and ambition ignite the inevitable. The fires begin small, perhaps accidental, set by foraging troops or vengeful local gangs, but they quickly consume the wooden city. Picture the night of the attack on the shogunal palace itself. Sparks from burning arrows rain down like golden snow. The screams of the dying are swallowed by the terrifying roar of the conflagration. The massive, beautiful aristocratic mansions, designed with open verandas and light wooden screens, offer no resistance to the flames. They burn like paper lanterns. The elegant, carefully planned Heian grid is reduced to ruins. Where once stood meticulously maintained avenues and sprawling aristocratic villas, there are now only ash, rubble, and the scorched stumps of wooden pillars. The war drags on for 10 more years, an agonizing stalemate where fighting flares up, dies down, and flares up again, preventing any organized recovery. By the time the weary armies finally withdraw in 1477, Kyoto is a ghost city. Historians estimate that perhaps a third of Japan's population was affected by the subsequent famines and political instability, but Kyoto suffered the deepest cut, losing its physical manifestation of grandeur. The political center, the shogunate, effectively vanished. The emperor and the remaining Kuge were impoverished, reduced to living in makeshift huts, often forced to sell their family treasures, calligraphy scrolls, ancient silks to survive. The great dream of Heian-kyō, the city of peace and tranquility, lay in ashes. The physical destruction of the Ōnin War forces a profound cultural shift that defines the aesthetics of the following century. Out of the ashes rises the Higashiyama culture, sponsored by the later Ashikaga shoguns like Yashimasa Yoshimasa, who sought solace and refinement amidst the ruins. This aesthetic was born of necessity and Zen philosophy. When you visit the two most famous monuments associated with the Ashikaga shogunate today, you witness the tension between these two worlds, the brazen opulence of the past and the austere beauty of the future. The first is Kinkaku-ji, the Golden Pavilion. Originally built in the late 14th century as the retirement villa for Shogun Ashikaga Yoshimitsu, this structure represents the ultimate fusion of military power and courtly aesthetics. Today, as the sun strikes its brilliant facade, entirely covered in shimmering gold leaf and reflected perfectly in the surrounding Kyokochi, or mirror pond, it is an image of defiant, glittering wealth. Yoshimitsu, a man of immense power, demanded that the pavilion reflect the splendor of the Pure Land paradise, built to impress his peers and perhaps intimidate his enemies. It is opulence raised to the level of spiritual architecture, a testament to the military patronage of the arts that sought legitimacy through gold. The current structure is a meticulous reconstruction, rebuilt after its infamous burning in 1950 by a disillusioned novice monk, an act of aesthetic rejection chronicled beautifully in Yukio Mishima's novel. But even as a reconstruction, the Golden Pavilion stands as the pinnacle of the Kityama culture, a world of visible grandeur, blending palace styles, samurai structures, and Buddhist devotion. In stark contrast, travel across the city to Ginkaku-ji, the Silver Pavilion. Built by Yoshimitsu's grandson, Shogun Ashikaga Yoshimasa, following the devastation of the Ōnin War, Ginkaku-ji is the embodiment of the new, subdued Higashiyama aesthetic. It was meant to be covered in silver leaf, mirroring its golden predecessor, but the shogunate was by then too poor, its treasury depleted by civil war and mismanagement. Whether the silver covering was postponed or abandoned is a point of scholarly debate, but the result is a profound, almost accidental masterpiece of restraint. The pavilion itself is elegant, built of dark, unpainted wood, prioritizing natural materials and soft light. The surrounding garden is the true centerpiece. Here, amidst the moss and manicured pines, you find the Kaisansui Kare Sansui, or dry landscape garden, a meticulous arrangement of raked white sand and rock formations. The sand is raked into precise patterns, symbolizing waves, and the enormous conical sand mound, the Jinshadan, is said to represent Mount Fuji or perhaps the full moon rising over the sea. This is where the aesthetic of Wabi-Sabi, the appreciation of subtle, imperfect, and transient beauty was formalized. To stand before Ginkaku-ji's dry garden today is to understand how art survived chaos. The refinement moved inward. Instead of celebrating external wealth, the artists, poets, and Zen masters sought beauty in austere simplicity, forced into a contemplative, minimalist approach by poverty and the memory of fire. The Zen monasteries, often destroyed and rebuilt, became cultural sanctuaries, cultivating disciplines like the tea ceremony, flower arranging, ikebana, and no theater, all highly ritualized forms focused on finding perfection within limitation. The culture retreated, but it survived. The 16th century saw Kyoto used as a strategic prize by the three great unifiers of Japan: Oda Nobunaga, Toyotomi Hideyoshi, and finally Tokugawa Ieyasu. Each understood that military victory in the field was meaningless without control of Kyoto, which conferred the symbolic legitimacy of the emperor. Nobunaga brutally asserted his will, marching into the city and expelling the last Ashikaga shogun in 1573, extinguishing the shogunate's physical presence and making himself the true, if unofficial, ruler. He also famously and ruthlessly destroyed the powerful warrior monks of Enryakuji on Mount Heiai, the vast Tendai temple complex overlooking Kyoto, ending the era of politically motivated religious armies. Hideyoshi, following Nobunaga, began the massive task of rebuilding the capital, commissioning grand temples and palaces to assert his unified authority. But it was Ieyasu who finally defeated his rivals at the pivotal Battle of Sekigahara in 1600, who codified Kyoto's final status for the next 260 years. He established his new, permanent capital far to the east in Edo, modern Tokyo, yet he needed a tangible symbol of his absolute authority over the ancient seat of the emperor. That symbol is Nijo Castle, Nijo-jo. To visit Nijo Castle today is to physically walk through the political reality of the Edo period. The structure is not the rustic, elegant aesthetic of the Heian court, nor the defensive simplicity of a medieval mountain fortress. It is a massive, opulent administrative and military base, built in the early 17th century and strategically located to dominate the city center and, crucially, to monitor the imperial palace nearby. Ieyasu built it not as a residence, he rarely stayed there, but as a statement, a place where the shogun's power would be demonstrated during rare visits to the emperor. Step through the Karaman Gate, a masterpiece of bold, flamboyant Momoyama-style architecture, covered in intricate carvings of mythical beasts and gilded decorations. It is a sharp, intentional contrast to the subdued elegance favored by the court. It is the aesthetic of naked, unquestionable power. Inside the Ninomaru Palace, you encounter the famous Nightingale floors Uji-subari. As you walk the long, polished wooden corridors that connect the lavish reception rooms, the floorboards emit a distinct, high-pitched squeak, like the chirping of a bird. This sound was achieved by specialized metal clamps under the boards, rubbing against nails as weight was applied. This was not a charming acoustic feature, it was a military alarm system. Every step taken by a visitor, a servant, or an intruder was broadcast instantly to hidden guards. Imagine the atmosphere in those halls. The rooms are grand, decorated with massive sliding doors, fusuma painted in dazzling gold leaf by the Kano school masters, depicting scenes of tigers, pines, and eagles, all symbols of military strength and longevity. Yet beneath the opulence, the paranoia is palpable. The squeak of the floors reminds everyone, from the lowliest servant to the highest noble being received by the shogun, that they are under absolute surveillance. Kyoto may have housed the revered imperial line, but Nijo Castle stood as the iron fist of Tokugawa authority, enforcing a peace purchased by centralization and control. The system worked. For over 2 centuries, Kyoto was politically sidelined but culturally preserved. The emperor was revered as a divine figurehead, isolated in the imperial palace grounds, unable to leave without the shogun's permission, a powerful symbol held captive by military necessity. This status as the cultural sanctuary proved to be Kyoto's salvation. When the Meiji Restoration finally ended the shogunate in 1868, the young Emperor Meiji was formally restored to power. The capital was officially moved to Edo, which was renamed Tokyo, the eastern capital. This political shift initially plunged Kyoto into an identity crisis, stripping it of its administrative purpose. However, because the capital had moved, Kyoto was spared the massive, often destructive modernization drives that transformed Tokyo and other cities. Its history was left largely intact. And crucially, it was spared the firebombing campaigns of the Second World War, reportedly due to the intervention of American Secretary of War Henry Stimson, who recognized the city's irreplaceable cultural value. Today, Kyoto survives not just as a city, but as a living museum, a testament to resilience and the enduring power of aesthetic discipline. The travel experience here is fundamentally different from anywhere else in Japan. It demands a slower pace, a willingness to engage with quiet reflection. If you travel to the western edge of the city, to the district of Arashiyama, you encounter one of Kyoto's most famous yet most transient spectacles, the bamboo grove. Stepping off the street and into the dense forest of towering green stalks is a total sensory transformation. The light is filtered, turning the air green. The sound of the city vanishes, replaced by the creak of the bamboo swaying in the breeze and the low murmur of the wind high above. It is an immersive, almost otherworldly experience that requires no historical context, yet perfectly embodies the Japanese aesthetic link between nature and contemplation. Nearby lies Tenryuji, another of the great Zen temples, a UNESCO World Heritage Site founded by the first Ashikaga shogun Takuji Takauji in the 14th century. The temple's immense size and beautiful landscape garden, designed by the celebrated Zen master Muso Soseki, demonstrate the powerful patronage that Zen received from the military elite, intertwining spiritual discipline with martial authority. The garden, with its central pond and strategically placed rocks, utilizes the principle of shakkei, or borrowed scenery, seamlessly integrating the surrounding Arashiyama Mountains into its composition. It is a masterpiece of design, ensuring that even within the confines of a religious compound, the vastness of nature is always present. To truly understand the essence of Kyoto, you must walk the approach roads of the Higashiyama district again, the streets known as Sanenzaka, Sonnenzaka, and Ninenzaka, Ninenzaka. These narrow, cobbled lanes, lined with traditional wooden storefronts selling Kiyomizu-yaki ceramics, pickled vegetables, tsukemono, and green tea sweets, transport you directly into the atmosphere of the Edo period, or perhaps even the chaotic, yet culturally thriving post-Ōnin War recovery. The gentle slope, the dark wood, the soft light of the paper lanterns in the early evening. This is the physical geography of traditional Kyoto, where the aesthetic of the past survives in commerce and daily life. And then there is Fushimi Inari Taisha, Fushimi Inari Taisha, located in the southern part of the city. This is the head shrine for the thousands of Inari shrines across Japan dedicated to the Shinto god of rice, prosperity, and agriculture. The ascent up the mountainside is marked by the spectacular, iconic spectacle of thousands upon thousands of closely spaced, brilliant vermilion torii gates, creating mesmerizing, seemingly endless tunnels. The magic of Fushimi Inari lies in its democracy. Each gate is a donation from an individual or a business, a tangible, visible prayer for success and good fortune. Walking this path today is not just walking a historical road. It is walking a continuous, living stream of devotion spanning centuries, a visual census of private prosperity and deep-seated religious faith that links the ancient world of the rice goddess to the modern world of commerce and technology. The dense vermilion color, traditionally believed to possess the power to ward off evil, envelops you, a powerful reminder that Shintoism, Japan's native spirituality, remains deeply embedded in the nation's psyche, even as the philosophical refinement of Buddhism dominates the temple landscape. Kyoto, then, is a journey not just through time, but through political philosophy. It is a city that demonstrates the ultimate, enduring tension between symbolic authority and pragmatic power. For 1,000 years, military rulers tried to control it, sack it, or sideline it, yet they could never erase its sacred necessity. The shoguns needed the emperor needed the cultural continuity, and the people needed the spiritual anchors provided by the shrines and temples. The grid of Heian-kyō may have been shattered by the Ōnin War, and the glory of the Heian court may only exist in literature, but the core idea of Kyoto, a place defined by the rigorous pursuit of beauty, whether expressed in gold, raked sand, or a simple bowl of freshly prepared matcha, persists. To leave Kyoto is to carry with you the profound lesson that aesthetic discipline is a form of survival. The chaos of the Warring States period, the calculated tyranny of the Tokugawa Shogunate, these forces could crush the government, but they could not destroy the culture that Kyoto had so meticulously nurtured. Every perfectly prepared kaiseki meal, every precisely raked stone garden, every quiet moment of contemplation on the wooden stage of Kiyomizu-dera looking out over the modern sprawl is a small, triumphant echo of the resilience forged in fire and war. The city stands today as the world's most successful historical palimpsest, a parchment where the text of one era never quite erases the text of the one before it. We walk on the ghost of Suzaku Avenue, shop in the shadow of the shogun's fortress at Nijo, and seek quiet contemplation in gardens designed by Zen monks fleeing civil war. To visit Kyoto is to witness the enduring soul of Japan, a place where the past is not merely remembered, but lives, breathes, and continues to teach us the quiet power of perseverance and the eternal pursuit of refined beauty. The silence you seek here is not empty, it is saturated with history. Listen closely, and you can still hear the screams of the Ōnin War, the delicate brushstrokes of a Fujiwara poet, and the persistent, protective squeak of the shogun's Nightingale floors, all layered beneath the ambient hum of the modern world. This is Kyoto, the capital that refused to die.